When was the last time you remembered a phone number, not looked one up, not asked your phone to call someone, actually held a phone number in your head, the way people used to hold dozens of them automatically without thinking about it? If you're struggling to answer that question, you are not alone. And you are not just forgetful. Something has changed, like not in your circumstances, not in how busy you are, not in the complexity of modern life. Something has changed in the way your brain allocates the biological resources it uses for memory. Your brain is restructuring itself around your phone, not metaphorically, not as a figure of speech. Neurologically, the neural circuits that your hippocampus, the brain's primary memory formation structure, would once have used to encode, store, and retrieve information are being systematically redirected, pruned, and in some cases effectively disabled because the brain has concluded that it does not need them because you have a phone. This video is about what that restructuring actually looks like in the brain, what it costs you beyond the ability to remember phone numbers, and why the implications extend significantly further than most discussions of screen time are willing to go. The human code take. Most coverage of smartphone memory effects focuses on the inconvenience. You can't remember things as well as you used to. You feel scatterbrained. Your attention span is shorter. The human code's specific position goes further. The memory functions being outsourced to your phone are not peripheral. They are not just the storage of facts and numbers. They are the cognitive infrastructure through which you construct a continuous sense of self across time. The hippocampus is not just a filing cabinet for information. It is the organ that stitches your experiences into a coherent narrative of who you are. When its workload is systematically reduced by external storage, the research suggests you don't just remember less, you experience yourself differently, and that is a significantly more serious development than most people have been told. The term digital amnesia was introduced in a 2015 study commissioned by cybersecurity company Kaspersky Lab, which surveyed over 6,000 adults across Europe and found that a significant majority could not recall basic contact information, their children's phone numbers, their own office numbers, without consulting their phone. The study sparked serious scientific debate about what this pattern represented at the neurological level. The deeper science draws on the concept of cognitive offloading, the deliberate use of external tools to reduce the demands placed on internal cognitive systems, and on what psychologist Betsy Sparrow at Columbia University called the Google effect, documented in a landmark 2011 paper in the journal Science. We will also draw on the neuroscience of hippocampal function and spatial navigation from the work of researchers including Eleanor Maguire at University College London, whose studies of London taxi drivers produced some of the most important findings about hippocampal plasticity in the past 3 decades, and on more recent research from the University of Waterloo on how smartphone availability, even without active use, affects cognitive capacity. The picture that emerges from this research is more specific and more concerning than the general conversation about screen time acknowledges. Point 1, the Google effect. Your brain stops storing what it knows it can look up. In 2011, psychologist Betsy Sparrow and her colleagues at Columbia, Harvard, and the University of Wisconsin published a paper in Science that documented something that had been suspected but never rigorously tested. When people know that information will be available to them later through an external source, their brains are less likely to encode that information in the first place. The experiments were elegantly simple. Participants were asked to type a series of trivia facts into a computer. Half were told the information would be saved, half were told it would be erased. Those who believed the information would be saved showed significantly worse recall of the content than those who believed it would be erased. The brain, it appeared, was monitoring not just the information, but the availability of the information, and adjusting its investment and encoding accordingly. In a second experiment, participants who were primed to think about computers before a memory task showed better memory for where information had been stored than for the information itself. Their brains had preferentially encoded the location of the information over its content because knowing where to find something is more cognitively efficient than storing the thing itself when external storage is reliable and accessible. Sparrow described this as transactive memory. a well-established concept in cognitive psychology originally developed to describe how human partnerships and groups distribute memory load across individual members. In a marriage or a working partnership, you don't need to know everything. You just need to know who knows what. Sparrow's research suggested that people are now extending this transactive memory relationship to their devices. The phone has become the partner who knows things. The brain has adjusted accordingly. The adjustment is not lazy or pathological. It is cognitively rational, given the assumption that the phone is always available. But it carries costs that the rationality calculation doesn't account for, because what the brain stops encoding is not just the information itself. It is the cognitive work of engaging with information deeply enough to remember it. The elaborative processing that produces not just memory, but understanding, connection, and the ability to use information flexibly in new contexts. What you remember is what you have processed. What you look up, you have processed less. And a brain that knows it can look something up, processes it less from the outset. Point 2, the hippocampus, what it actually does and why its workload matters. To understand what is at stake in the smartphone memory debate, you need to understand what the hippocampus actually does, because it does considerably more than store facts, and the implications of reducing its workload extend considerably beyond forgetting phone numbers. The hippocampus is a small, curved structure in the medial temporal lobe of the brain. You have one in each hemisphere, and it is essential to the formation of new episodic memories of events, experiences, and personally significant information. It is also critical to spatial navigation, to the binding of separate pieces of information into coherent memories, and to what researchers call pattern separation, the ability to distinguish between similar experiences and store them as distinct memories rather than merging them into a single blurred template. What is perhaps most relevant to the smartphone memory question is a less commonly discussed function. The hippocampus plays a central role in what might be called the imagination of the future. Research by Eleanor, Maguire, and her colleagues, among others, has established that the same hippocampal networks involved in retrieving past memories are also activated when people imagine future scenarios, plan, simulate possible outcomes, and construct counterfactual alternatives. The hippocampus is not just a memory organ, it is a mental simulation engine. The implications of this are significant. If the hippocampus is engaged when we remember the past and when we imagine the future, when we plan, when we empathize with others by simulating their perspective, when we construct narratives about our own life and trajectory, then a systematic reduction in the demands placed on hippocampal function is not simply a matter of forgetting where you put your keys. It is a reduction in the brain's capacity for the specific kind of integrative, narrative, future-oriented thinking that constitutes the cognitive substrate of identity, planning, creativity, and self-understanding. This is what the early smartphone memory research was pointing at, and mostly failing to articulate clearly. The issue is not that you can't remember your mother's phone number. The issue is what the hippocampus was doing while it was maintaining and retrieving that number, and what it is not doing when that function is outsourced. I want to stop here and make something explicit, because this is the point where the research becomes personally uncomfortable in a specific way. You might be thinking, fine, my brain offloads to my phone, that's just efficiency. But here is what the neuroscience of memory consolidation actually shows. Like, the brain does not just store memories, like it replays and reconsolidates them during idle periods, during mind wandering, during the transitions between tasks. Every time you reach for your phone in a moment of boredom or awkwardness or stillness, every time you fill the gap that would otherwise have been mental downtime, you are interrupting a process, not a trivial process. The process through which your brain integrates recent experiences into long-term memory, identifies patterns across separate events, and generates the insights and connections that feel like ideas. The phone is not just replacing your memory for facts. It is replacing the mental space in which memory does its most important work. Point 3, the taxi driver studies what happens when navigation is offloaded to GPS. One of the most compelling bodies of evidence for hippocampal plasticity and for what happens to hippocampal structure when specific cognitive demands are removed comes not from smartphone research, but from a series of studies on London taxi drivers conducted by Eleanor Maguire and colleagues at University College London beginning in the late 1990s. To obtain a taxi license in London, drivers must pass an extraordinarily demanding test called the Knowledge, a multi-year process of learning the layout of approximately 25,000 streets within a 6-mile radius of Charing Cross, along with thousands of points of interest. The preparation typically takes 3 to 4 years of intensive daily study and practice. The failure rate is substantial. Maguire's research found something remarkable. Compared to matched controls who had not undergone this training, licensed London taxi drivers showed significantly greater gray matter volume in the posterior hippocampus, the region most associated with spatial navigation and memory, and crucially, the degree of enlargement was correlated with the number of years the driver had been doing the job. More experience, more structural change. The hippocampus had physically grown in response to the sustained cognitive demand placed on it. Equally important was the follow-up finding. When taxi drivers retired and stopped actively navigating the complex London street network from memory, the hippocampal changes were not permanent. The structural differences diminished over time. Use it or lose it is not just a motivational slogan. It describes a real biological process of neural resource allocation. Now apply this to GPS navigation. When you navigate using turn-by-turn directions from a device, you are following instructions rather than constructing and maintaining a spatial model of the environment in your own mind. The cognitive demand on the hippocampus is dramatically reduced. You are arriving at your destination without having exercised the navigational circuits that, with sustained use, would have produced structural changes. A 2017 study published in Nature Communications by Hugo Spears and colleagues at UCL found exactly what you would expect given Maguire's taxi driver research. People who used GPS to navigate showed significantly less hippocampal and prefrontal cortex activity than people who navigated without it. The brain regions that would have been engaged by active navigation were not being engaged. And if the taxi driver research is any guide, sustained disengagement of this kind has structural consequences. You are not just arriving at your destination more easily, you are arriving with a slightly less exercised hippocampus than you would have if you had navigated yourself. Point 4, the brain drain study. Your phone reduces your intelligence by sitting on the table. In 2017, Adrian Ward and colleagues at the University of Texas at Austin published a study with an arresting finding that deserves to be significantly more widely known than it is. The study asked participants to complete a series of cognitive tasks, tests of available working memory capacity and fluid intelligence under one of 3 conditions. In the first condition, participants' smartphones were placed face down on the desk in front of them. In the second condition, smartphones were placed in participants' pockets or bags out of sight. In the third condition, smartphones were left in a separate room entirely. The finding was clear and consistent. Participants whose phones were in a separate room performed significantly better on the cognitive tasks than those whose phones were on the desk, even face down and even with notifications silenced. Participants whose phones were in their pocket or bag performed at an intermediate level, better than desk, worse than another room. The mechanism the researchers proposed is what they called a brain drain effect. The effort required to not think about your phone, to inhibit the habitual impulse to check it, to prevent it from occupying working memory resources, consumes cognitive capacity even when the phone is entirely passive, entirely silent, and entirely out of sight. The presence of the phone, in and of itself, creates a cognitive load simply by being something you have to not attend to. The effect was strongest in participants who rated themselves as most dependent on their phones, for whom the habit of phone checking was most deeply established, which means the effect scales with exactly the variable you would expect. The more thoroughly the phone has been integrated into your cognitive habits, the more of your cognitive capacity its mere presence consumes. Think about the implications of this for every meeting you have attended with your phone on the table, every conversation you have had with your phone in your pocket, every piece of reading or thinking or creative work you have tried to do with your phone nearby. The phone was not just a potential distraction in those moments. It was an active reduction of your available cognitive capacity, all right, regardless of whether you ever looked at it. The most cognitively expensive thing your phone does may not be the time you spend on it. It may be the mental resources it consumes while you're trying to ignore it. Point 5, cognitive offloading in the self. What you lose when the phone knows who you are. Here's where the conversation about digital amnesia moves from neuroscience to something more fundamental and something that most discussions of smartphone effects do not reach. Your sense of self. Your continuous, coherent experience of being a particular person with a particular history, particular values, particular memories that connect your present to your past is not a fixed property of your brain. It is something that is actively constructed, maintained, and updated by specific cognitive processes. Processes that depend in ways we are only beginning to understand fully on the very hippocampal functions that are most affected by digital offloading. The psychologist Daniel Schachter at Harvard has described what he calls the constructive nature of memory. Memories are not retrievals of stored recordings, but active reconstructions, assembled from fragments and shaped by current context, emotion, and expectation. And the process of reconstruction is not just about accurately recovering the past. It is about using the past to understand the present and simulate the future. When you remember a difficult experience you navigated successfully, your brain is not just retrieving an archived file, it is generating in the present moment a felt sense of your own capacity to navigate difficulty, which then informs your expectations and confidence going forward. When you remember a conversation in which you held a position under pressure, your brain is generating a sense of the kind of person you are and what you stand for. Memory, in this view, is not separate from identity. Memory is one of the primary mechanisms through which identity is continuously generated. Now, consider what happens when significant portions of your experiential record are outsourced. Not the big emotionally salient memories. Those are encoded robustly regardless, but the texture of ordinary experience, the routes you walked, the phone numbers you kept, the facts you retained, the small navigational and cognitive tasks you completed without assistance. These are not dramatic memories, but they are the accumulated substrate of daily competence, the felt sense built from thousands of small experiences that you are capable, that you know things, that you can find your way. When those experiences are systematically replaced by the phone completing the task on your behalf, the experiences themselves are not stored in the same way. You did not navigate, but the phone navigated. You did not remember, the phone remembered. The cognitive work that would have produced a felt sense of your own capacity was not done by you. Researchers, including Evan Risco at the University of Waterloo, have begun investigating this question directly, asking not just whether offloading affects memory for specific content, but whether it affects the metacognitive experience of feeling capable and self-sufficient. The early evidence suggests that it does. People who offload more to external devices report lower confidence in their own memory capacity and lower metacognitive satisfaction with their even when their actual cognitive performance on tested tasks is comparable to those who offload less. You may be performing at the same level, but you feel less capable because the felt sense of cognitive competence comes not just from outcomes, but from the experience of doing the cognitive work yourself. And that experience is being systematically transferred to a device. Point 6, what actually helps, reclaiming cognitive ownership without becoming a Luddite. The argument of this video is not that smartphones are straightforwardly bad or that you should stop using them. That argument is both practically useless and scientifically unsophisticated. The question is not whether to use external cognitive tools. Humans have always used them, from written language to maps to calculators, but how to use them in ways that preserve rather than erode the cognitive capacities that matter most. The distinction that matters, according to the research, is between offloading that substitutes for cognitive engagement and offloading that supports it. Writing a shopping list so that you can think about something else while you shop is different from outsourcing the navigation of a new city so thoroughly that you never build a spatial model of it. The first frees cognitive resources for other tasks. The second prevents the cognitive work that builds capability. The most evidence-supported practice for counteracting the Google effect is what learning scientists call effortful retrieval. The deliberate, repeated practice of trying to recall information from your own memory rather than looking it up. The key word is effortful. The evidence is consistent that the effort of retrieval, like the cognitive strain of trying to remember something and succeeding, is precisely what produces durable memory consolidation. Easy retrieval from an external source produces none of that benefit. This is why flashcards and testing yourself outperform rereading by dramatic margins in every well-controlled study of learning, not because rereading is worthless, but because the effortful attempt at retrieval, including the productive failure of not quite remembering before the answer comes, is the stimulus that consolidates memory at a neurological level. The strain is the point. Practically, try to remember directions before you open Google Maps, even if you end up opening it anyway. Try to remember facts before you search, even if the search follows immediately. Try to recall someone's name or phone number before looking it up. The attempt matters more than the success. And the habit of attempting, of reaching for your own memory first as the default is the habit that keeps the hippocampus doing the work it was built to do. On navigation specifically, occasionally, not always, but occasionally, navigate somewhere new without GPS. Take a route you don't know. Get somewhat lost. Recover. Build the spatial model yourself. The disorientation you feel is not a problem to be solved by opening maps. It is the precise cognitive experience that produces hippocampal engagement, and with repetition, the structural changes that Maguire documented in the taxi drivers. On the phone presence effect, the Ward et al. Finding is stark enough that it justifies a specific behavioral change. For any task that requires sustained concentration, IT, reading, writing, thinking, having a conversation that matters, IT. So the phone should not be in the room, not face down, not silenced, not in your pocket in another room. The cognitive capacity you recover by removing it is not trivial. And the cost of doing so is close to zero. And on the deeper question of memory and identity, the practice of deliberate recall, of regularly, effortfully reviewing your own experiences, forming opinions without searching for what other people think first, retaining information through the strain of trying to hold it, is not just a memory technique. It is a practice of cognitive self-possession, of keeping your own mind as the primary site of your thinking, rather than a terminal through which you access thinking done elsewhere. The phone is not making you stupid, but it is making your brain an offer your ancestors never had to refuse. And the question worth asking is, on what terms are you accepting it? This week, I want you to do one specific thing. Leave your phone in a different room for 3 hours, ideally during a period you'd normally use for reading, thinking, or working on something that matters. No exceptions, no just checking, no pocket. At the end of those 3 hours, notice two things. First, how many times did you feel the impulse to reach for it? Second, what did your mind do with the space that reaching for it would have filled? What did you think about? What came up? What got resolved that has been sitting unresolved? That space, the space your phone has been colonizing quietly, one micro reach at a time, is where your hippocampus does its most important work. The integration, the consolidation, the sense-making that constitutes memory's deepest function. You don't have to give your phone up, but you might consider giving your brain back some of the territory it has been quietly ceding. Subscribe to the Human Code. Every week, we go somewhere most psychology content is not willing to go. The next video is going to be just as uncomfortable. See you there.